The following is a special presentation of iRacing on LSRTV, your home for sim racing. Live tonight from the Kentucky Speedway, LSRTV, happy to say good evening sim racing fans and welcome to LSRTV's coverage of the 2018 Full Throttle Real Sim Racing Cup Series powered by English Auto L.L.C. We're tonight from the Kentucky Speedway. We say hello for the halfway point on this 2018 campaign. As always, so happy that you're spending a Monday night with us on LSRTV at iRacing Live. As always, myself, Evan Pasoko, Brian Backlund, Trevor Valderrama up at the LSRTV booth with Cisco Scarabuzza downstairs, twisted and tweaking the dials, bringing us to you tonight on LSRTV and iRacing Live. And Brian, we continue into the middle portion of this season, the Kentucky 125 on tap tonight. It is the halfway point of the season, and coming into tonight, Dylan Jones on a two-race win streak, taking the last two wins at Daytona and Chicagoland.
And the other thing you have to think about for tonight is we don't have the new version of Kentucky like we saw the Monster Energy Cup Series run this past weekend. We still have the old surface, the very bumpy surface, the very rough surface that these guys are going to be battling all night long. This track will beat you to death, and it's actually, in some cases, more bumpy down the straightaway than it is in the corner. So these guys are going to have their hands full without really any chance to take a chance to catch a breather before they get back to it. So it's going to be very exciting to watch. I really enjoy the older surface for racetracks because it really makes the drivers have to work for it.
And it is going to be a fun race, of course. We'll talk some more specifics about this Kentucky Speedway. Trevor tonight goes on, and we get to see these drivers bouncing around and whatnot. But let's kind of set the scene for where we sit coming into tonight. As noted, the 15th race of the season. And as we come into tonight, the overall championship is led by Brandon Bowie. The likes of Michael Guerrilla, Dylan Jones up there. No surprise. But the main thing we have to be keeping an eye on still, even as we get closer to the start of the playoffs, and therefore that overall points going to be getting a lot more important in these next couple of weeks. The Segment 2 Championship still very much on the minds of a lot of drivers. Now, Bowie, Jones, top 3 in points overall. Also, 1 and 2 in Segment 2's championship standings through 4 races. Brandon Bowie comes into tonight with just a 2-point advantage over Dylan Jones. Obviously, Jones's last 2 wins in a row have helped him get up there. Andrew Freinar sits 3rd in the Segment Championship, only 3 points off of Jones and 5 off of the championship lead. The only positions that matter in the Segment Championship are the top 3, because those are the drivers who get the payouts if they can stay up there through this 10-race segment.
Yeah, and you know, Brandon Bowie has just been dominant so much this season, and as well as Dylan Jones the past couple weeks, he is actually the 2nd fastest in practice, so I'm expecting to see him use a lot of momentum from these 2 races to propel him forward to continue to dominate in the point standings and try to catch up to him as much as possible. Now, including this race, we have 6 races before the playoffs start, so these guys got to kick it into gear if they want to try to contend for that top spot at all. You know, the guys, Daniel Eberhardt and so on back, they just got to kick it into drive and try to get some points so they can propel themselves forward.
We talk about the racetracks, obviously, that we come to, Brian. One topic that we really landed on in last week's peak broadcast was specialty tracks. And Kentucky is very much unique in the fact that it has very little banking compared to a lot of the other 1.5-mile racetracks. But this is the last cookie-cutter intermediate track until we start the playoffs in Vegas in September. After this, New Hampshire, Pocono, Watkins Glen, Darlington, and Indianapolis. A lot of unique racetracks following this evening.
We talked earlier this year about how unique the schedule was for these guys when we went through a stretch where we had 3 short tracks, and then you had Talladega, and then Dover, and then Charlotte. It was a pretty wild stretch then. Well, this is another stretch very similar to that because, like you mentioned, we've got a road course coming up. We've got New Hampshire, we've got Pocono, Darlington, Indianapolis, Vegas. I mean, this is a stretch of tracks that are going to challenge these drivers in a bunch of different ways. You know, as we've already talked about, these guys are running out of time until the playoffs start, and now they've got to go to these tracks that they don't see every day, and they have to try to figure out how to be fast and how to outrun the guys around them. It's going to be very exciting to see how this thing all plays out, and for those guys that are on the outside looking in trying to get into the playoffs, they've really got their work cut out for them over these next 6 weeks.
Qualifying of the practice session has drawn to a close. Let's go trackside for a 15th time this season and take a look at tonight's LSRTV starting grid. Colson Bermudez back in the Full Throttle Real Sim Racing Cup Series, and the driver of the number 23 Ford is on pole with a 34.96, only driver to get down into the .4, so bring us to the green flag tonight, accompanied on the outside of the front row by the 17 of Michael Guerrilla. Andrew Freitas and Brandon Bowie, two big names back on row number 2. They'll start 3rd and 4th position respectively. David Comstock rounds out through your top 5.
We've got Dwayne Vincent starting in the 6th position here tonight, followed by Daniel Falkingham starting in 7th. It looks like Michael Cozy Jr. will be starting in the 8th position, followed by Andrew T. Jones, and then Shane Ewing will round out the top 10 here tonight.
Gabe Wood will go P11, P12, Scott McClendon, P13, the winner from 2 weeks prior, Dylan Jones, Spencer Preet, P14, and Lionel Callisto, P15.
Continuing on to the drivers who are qualified into this based on provisionals. Daniel Everhart there, 16th as noted. You've got Brian Chambliss in 17th. Austin Coop slated to roll from 18th position. That car not currently on the grid. And then you would also have Troy Haight 19th and Tom Morano in 20th. Inside and outside of row number 10. That is a look top to bottom at your LSRTV starting grid. I mentioned some of those specifics about this Kentucky Speedway. Let's talk about it right now. The 1.5 mile racetrack, 17 degrees off at 1 and 2, 14 down in 3 to 4. And again, as Brian, you noted, the big difference between what you're seeing right here, right now, and maybe what you saw if you tuned in on Saturday night, is the fact that this is still the old Kentucky, no repave. You can see that with the worn pavement down there, that light color, but it is very bumpy, and it's a rough trip around this joint.
Well, not only that, but it's going to be very hard on the tires here tonight. Those guys on Saturday night could go quite a while without having to change tires, but these guys are going to want tires after just a couple of laps around this racetrack tonight. So look for these guys to be trying to manage those tires and see who can hold on to them the longest. That's probably going to be the people you're going to see at the front here tonight.
Pace car going to be headed in this time. As always, we're happy that you're spending a Monday night with us on LSRTV and iRacing Live. Let's see what Colson Bermudez can do in his return to Real Sim Racing Cup Series action as the pace car goes down and in. And we get set to go green. The Kentucky 125 is underway with the American Ethanol green flag. A very slow bringing them to the green flag through the restart box. Again, initial start of the race. Got to wait all the way. And already a challenge for the race lead. Here comes Farinas up from row number 2. But it's not going to stick on the inside. Bermudez defends as they head to turn 2.
And as much as you want to try and get that track position early on, you got to be careful not to use up your tires that quick if you go that far down to the bottom, because you're just going to be using them up that much more. You see them run that second line not completely to the bottom, because you do not want to wear those tires. We already have a little slippery sliding going on. The 43 of Brandon Bowie had a little bit of tough time coming off corner number 4 as well as Daniel Falkingham.
Falkingham in a position there as well, or tries to utilize that ability of starting on the inside of his row to be able to slide on up and get a couple of positions. He'll end up staying in for Shane Ewing. He's got a good view of the side-by-side fight with Bowie and the 77 of Cozy, who up on the outside of the racetrack, coming off of a P3 finish just 1 week ago at Daytona International Speedway. Bowie going to win that one down on the inside of the racetrack as see the drivers come back onto the front straightaway here. One thing that they were utilizing, Brian, during the qualifying times earlier this evening was diving down to that apron on the front straightaway, coming to complete their lap. Now, there's a good amount of space down there right at the start-finish line, but leading up to that, as we see a battle for the race lead, the grass comes awfully close to that yellow line, so I don't expect these drivers going to be utilizing it much in race conditions, as you see the 88 have to tuck back in line.
Yeah, I don't think you'll see too many guys go down there during the race, other than maybe to try to set up for a pass. If Andrew Freenars was right on the back bumper of Colson Bermudez right there going down the front stretch, he might have made that dive to the apron just to try to cut the track just a little bit to get to his inside. But aside from that, I don't think you're going to see too many people using that. And you can see Freenars, as here he goes again to the bottom of the racetrack down in turn 3. He slams that car to the apron, almost actually runs into the apron, trying to make this pass, and it is going to be extremely difficult for these guys to make this pass happen because there is less banking down there. Plus, as the tires wear out, you're not going to be able to get back into the gas as quickly as maybe you would like. So that guy on the outside line is going to have the advantage. You almost, as the guy trying to make the move like Andrew Freenars is right here again, you almost have to try to make that move to the outside. Try to get the run coming off the corner and then hook a hard right and go to the guys outside. That way you have the advantage. Oh, there's contact as he hits the 23 of Colson Bermudez and kicks him sideways. Freenars to the lead, but contact is going to get him there.
I don't think he meant to get into him, but he definitely got a good taste of the left-hand side of Colson Bermudez's entry. And the number 23 Ford Fusion, significant damage driven because the contact wasn't just on that left rear. It was almost a glancing blow, so that whole driver's side of that car crumpled up, and again, probably just cosmetic damage, but it's certainly not going to help out Colson's effort, as he was in a good position defending the race lead. Freenars, I should say now, clearly out in front leading this race, slotted up as well into the number 2 position is going to be Michael Guerrilla, and the first side-by-side fights for third, but there's going to be problems back in the pack, and Dwayne Vincent's 13 is off and in the grass.
Yeah, I saw that happen. Go ahead, Trevor.
It just looked like the 13 got off the wall a little bit coming out of turn number 4 and then got into the 77. 77 wanted to try out the new graphics in the grass, and the 13 also went up into the outside wall, and that just threw the caution.
And it was a tough break for Dwayne Vincent, no doubt. An interesting hit because, Brian, sometimes you'll see that where, obviously that safer barrier added to the racetrack after that first concrete wall was there, so when you scan that onto the sim, you're losing about a foot or two there of racetrack. Sometimes that safer barrier just disappears all at once. It's a very abrupt ending. I thought maybe that's what caught out Dwayne Vincent, but he had just cleared that part of the racetrack. Looked like he just pushed it a little bit too hard, got a little bit of the wall, and if Cozy wasn't there, probably would have been able to hang on to it, but you're talking about contact only 6 laps off of the start of the race, so obviously everybody was still tightly packed in.
It is so hard when you're racing side by side like that to not get back into the gas too hard when you're on that situation, and I think that's what happened right there. He was racing very hard for that position, just trying to get the run off the corner, and the car started sliding up the racetrack, and at that point he was already committed, so there was really not much that he could do, but it's just one of those unfortunate set of circumstances, and I don't think either of these guys are too badly damaged, so I think they'll both be able to get rolling and have to come in and bend out some fenders a little bit, but they'll be good to go. But we have pit stops getting ready to happen now as Andrew Freenars has led the field to pit road, and Evan Pasoko, I believe all these guys are going to go for 4 fresh tires here.
We talk about just how abrasive this Kentucky Speedway is. Only about 6 laps of green flag action up until that point of contact, and everybody in agreement that we need to come down and get some fresh Goodyear Eagles. So first car down pit road and into the pit stall going to be the 88 of Andrew Freenars. He's in pit stall number 3. We just saw one car drive out of the pit lane on the right-hand side. That was Andrew T. Jones, I believe, who missed his pit stall. Race off of the pit lane going to come shortly. The calls 4 tires and fuel for all of the front runners, and well executed by Andrew Freenars, safely in and out P1.
Yeah, all these drivers get in and out very quickly, very well, and that just goes to show how important tires are and how fast they wear off. We're only on lap 8, and they wanted fresher tires, so this is just going to be the talking point of the whole entire night. Who can keep the car under them for the whole entire night? We've already seen some drivers do some slipping and sliding even on the first lap, so this just shows how hard this track is to handle, Evan.
So you'll see the 88 technically cycle out into the number 2 position. Of course, though, expected Andrew T. Jones to come down to the pit lane after missing his pit stall. No changes, 1, 2, 3. Daniel Falkenham does pick up a couple. Colson Bermudez loses an additional 2 spots on the pit lane. Brian, with this race being so early in the works, I was surprised maybe that the 23 didn't stay down there and get some damage fixed. It could be simply, again, that it's just, sheet metal damage, and you can't, you aren't given the option by the iRacing service to get it fixed because it's strictly cosmetic, or you can't repair it, any more than it sits, because he was right in and out but lost 2 spots.
It could also be that he had a couple of laps to shake that thing down after the contact happened and decided that the damage wasn't really affecting the handling or the performance of the car, so he didn't want to take that time and lose the track position. This track is very difficult to pass on, and the only opportunities that you're really going to have are going to be on the restart when everybody's bunched up, and then after a few laps when everybody's wore their tires out, and you hope that you can get by somebody pretty quickly. If one of these guys wants to try to hold you off for a couple of laps, they can do it pretty easily, so he doesn't really want to get too far back there, especially knowing that he's got a fast car. I mean, he obviously knows that he's got a pretty quick car. He was able to qualify on the pole, and it looks like he was fourth fastest in practice, so he knows he's got some speed in that car. But if he gets shuffled back into the pack, you get back here in 10th, 15th position, you may have the fastest car in the field, but that doesn't mean you're going to be able to get up there.
We'll see how all of this plays out. However, Andrew T. Jones at a 64 is currently still tracking behind that iRacing.com official pace car. Take a look down to the inside, and he will pit this time. So he played hooky for an extra lap, didn't come right back down to the pit lane. It made some of these guys think, is he gonna stay out and try it? He will come down to the pit lane. That'll cycle him all the way to the back of the 19-car pack in this one. So everything's gonna cycle on through. Lights of the pace car should be out this time. Yes, they are. So Jones wanting to top off and get as much fuel on board for the restart. He'll go all the way to the back. It'll be a Friedars and Guerrilla front row. And we'll see what comes from this one. We'll see if Andrew Friedars can get going, use that inside again. The one thing that I really noticed with Bermudez, Trevin, first start of the race, and this is the way it is in all of these Full Throttle Real Racing Cup Series events powered by English Auto L.L.C, is the fact that on the very initial start of the race, you cannot dictate the start. You have to go when the green flag drops. That's at the exit of the restart box. That is not going to be the case for the rest of this race, though. So Friedars can go from any time when the pace car heads down till they get to that exit of the box, so he's going to have a lot more options to play with here than what Coulson did.
Yeah, and if you're the leader for a long time, you just got to be careful. If we have a lot of cautions and you continue to be the control car, they're going to know when you go. So you got to start changing it up. Go right after the pace car, stay a little bit after the pace car, just change it up so they have no idea when you're going, because if they can predict, they'll have a better run going into turn number 1.
Pace car off and away. Let's see what Friedars can do when that Mustang drops down and out of the way. The ball is in his court now as they crunch up on the back bumper. It's going to be a very early start for Andrew Friedars as we go back green. 11 laps complete from the Kentucky Speedway. Guerrilla going to tuck into P2. The fight's going to be on for third. Comstock trying to block high and low. He'll maintain that spot into the corner.
He moves ahead for that third position, and the battle is on right behind him for fourth and fifth as you've got Daniel Falkingham and Brandon Bowie side by side for the fourth and fifth positions. Falkingham's on the outside line. He's got the preferred groove, but Bowie has the opportunity on these fresh tires to try to make something happen. He throws the car down into turn 3, and he's going to get a good run up off the corner. Actually gets a little sideways, but he's able to keep the foot in the gas, and he moves ahead to move into that fourth position. But here comes Falkingham looking back to the inside. Will he make the move? It looks like he's going to stay in line for right now. Now how about Coulson Bermudez now trying to look to the outside as they come off turn 2?
We've seen Friedars try a couple of times on at-time race leader Coulson Bermudez to make that pass to the inside. Couldn't do it. Eventually got that spot after the contact, which I believe was just unintentional contact when they both went off into the corner. But it's certainly showing you there with Falkingham tracing on the left rear quarter panel and Bowie not being able to get something to go, that it is difficult to get down on the inside and maintain speed all the way through the corner. We were talking about the apron a little bit ago. Coulson Bermudez clearly not worried about beating up on that race car at all because he threw it down there as he tries to get onto the back bumper of the one of Falkingham to make something happen. But so far, he can't get that little bit extra. Sits up at a car length off as he follows his line into 3.
Yeah, and all these drivers are kind of starting to start running single file, start making sure that they're not going to be wearing their tires too much, because really, the most time that you're going to be wanting to wear your tires and get track position is that first couple laps where you guys are all bunched up. Now you guys are single file, so now you're going to have to start finding different ways to get around, and it's a little bit more treacherous if you're going to go all the way down the bottom with the different kind of lane down there and using your tires up so much. So we're at the wait to see, and if somebody loses it pretty quickly, we'll see what they do as well.
See what they can do as well as you see that 43 of Bowie lose a little bit of time off the corner there, kind of tracked way wide, and thought that Falkingham might have been able to do something. Bermudez is still trying to get down on the inside of the racetrack, but can't find that little bit extra. Meanwhile, Friedars having a fantastic start to this one. Again, he went third to second real quick on the start of this race by passing Guerrilla, who sits at a P2 behind him, exactly where the 17 started. But after Frenars was able to make that move for the race lead, he kind of questioned with how much he struggled on the inside of Bermudez, Brian, just how good was the 88. But so far, so good after controlling and just sucking a bowl of the clean air 2/10 faster than Michael Guerrilla the last time by. The gap between 1 and 2, the biggest it's been in this short race so far, and almost a second.
Andrew Frenars is just sailing away at this point, as you mentioned, almost a full second back to just second place right now. But I'm looking at that number 23 car, and I'm really thinking if he can get some clean air, you're going to see Colson Bermudez begin to work his way back towards Andrew Frenars and maybe have a chance to challenge him for that race lead once again. I don't think he was going to just lay over and let Frenars have that lead when that contact happened. I think he had full intentions of racing him, and I have a feeling that he's going to try very hard to get back to him. But we've seen so far on this run how difficult it is to pass. I mean, he's had a couple of opportunities at Daniel Falkingham, but each time he has not been able to make it happen. And about 2 laps ago, he tried to make the move to the outside that I had mentioned, tried to get the run up off the corner to get to the outside of Falkingham, but Falkingham saw it coming and kind of threw a block on him to make sure it didn't happen, and it actually worked to his advantage because he was able to hold him off.
Able to hold him off, so everything works out in the end. Everybody else, though, with a good amount of separation. You do have that long, constant, single file line, Guerrilla on the back, where there really isn't much more driven than maybe 2 car lengths in between each car, so a small mistake's going to put you right into the middle of a hornet's nest. But assuming everybody can keep their foot in it, so far so good. Daniel Eberhardt now going to make a dive to the inside of Michael Cozy Jr. Inside's going to work out because he wasn't that low at a racetrack. Cozy gave him a ton of space that time in 3 and 4, so Eberhardt's going to complete the pass, and here comes Dylan Jones as well. So maybe the 77 and risk of losing another position, because you can see they're in line with where that 90 is and where the 51 is, so that inside really wasn't the inside. Cozy, I think, a little bit too friendly with those guys, going to drop back to P10.
Yeah, and looking further up the field, Brandon Bowie is using that high line to get around the number 42 of David Comstock. He's done it pretty well, actually, so we're have to see how this works. He used a lane higher than what Comstock was using, so really interesting to see these guys start mixing it up with lanes, and we're starting to see the number 1 and the number 23 look to the bottom side of the number 42, so maybe he's just wanting to fall back, but the 23 is finally under the number 1 of Falkingham.
Who's finally down onto the inside of Falkingham, and just as quickly as that happened now, the one machine is going to give up that position to Colson Bermudez, takes that spot away, and begins his slow march back to the front of the field. And I think still tough to know how good that 23 machine is, Brian. Obviously, that car is not going to be as quick as it was when it was leading it out in the clean air, so it's tough to judge if that little bit of a longer, I think, than he would have liked situation to get around those cars, get it back up to P5. Tough to tell if that's just simply because he's working in traffic, if it's the damage, or a combination of the two. He definitely, though, again, isn't backing off by any means. Aggressive to the inside of Comstock. Not enough speed, I think, to stay there. And once again, he'll throw it way down to the apron, but the 42 machine good defensively so far.
Yeah, but Colson Bermudez just did something down in 3 and 4. We have a caution on the racetrack, but Colson just did something I was waiting to see somebody do. That was go all the way to the apron almost to make that move. And the reason for our caution appears to be the number 51 machine of Scott McClendon. Looks like he might have had a little bit of help from the 11 of Dylan Jones. I have to go back and look at that once again, but going off into the corner, actually that was Daniel Eberhardt got into him and kicked the number 51 car around, and that's going to be what brings us out for back under caution for the second time here tonight.
It almost looked very similar, Trevor, to what we saw with the contact in that battle for the race lead earlier between Bermudez and Frenars. Just in this case, it was Eberhardt trying to get down onto the inside of McClendon and didn't quite come down enough. I think obviously the 51's going to start to make that arc into the corner, so the 90 a little bit uncommitted as far as making the move to the inside or staying behind him, and they just get the slightest bits of contact, and Scott McClendon did about everything he could to hang on to it. Eventually, though, slaps the wall and brings out the caution, so second yellow on the night.
Yeah, and that just goes along with kind of racing, and you just have two different lines that two people are running and trying to go for that same piece of real estate, and then that real estate closes very quickly, and everything just goes bad for each driver. But the number 51 was able to collect it slightly and only get a little bit of contact into that outside wall.
Race leader is going to be back onto the pit lane this time. Obviously, no doubt if they wanted him after about 7 laps, they're going to want him after about a 20-lap run or so, as by the time we get back read, we'll be within side of 100 laps to go here for the Kentucky Speedway. Faridar's first in. He's got a good gap back to Guerrilla. We'll see if the 88 can execute again.
Down here into his pit box, cannot make any mistakes here, and it looks like so far all the leaders got into their pit boxes cleanly. I did not see any issues there, and as you mentioned, after such a long green flag run, everybody's going to want 4 tires and fuel to try to get back out there with the best handling car that they can possibly have. Freenarge is down and away. Here comes David Comstock with a great pit stop. He's going to come out second. Freenarge will win the race off of pit road with ease, but Comstock's going to go from, I believe he was in 5th prior to that, all the way up to 2nd, so a very nice jump for that number 42 machine.
The nice jump for the number 42 as Comstock works his way up to the front row. We work under our second caution flag of the evening from the Kentucky Speedway. We'll take this opportunity, step aside, take a yellow flag of our own, and as noted, we'll come back inside of 100 laps to go in the Kentucky 125. You're watching LSRTV's coverage of the Full Throttle Real Sim Racing Cup Series, powered by English Auto L.L.C. and your home for sim racing and iRacing live. Back to Kentucky in a moment.
Team racing allows multiple iRacing members to team up and race together, just like in real-world endurance series. Teammates can share driving duties, spot for one another, or be a crew chief. Team racing is free, both to join a team and to create one. Each teammate races on his or her own computer from wherever they want to. Your teammates can be anywhere in the world, and changing drivers mid-race is as easy as a click of a button. iRacing features team endurance events ranging from just a couple of hours to 24 hours in length. So, if you fancy taking part in an iRacing endurance race in the future, you can learn more about team racing on the teams page on the member website.
And back live from the virtual Kentucky Speedway, you're watching LSRTV's coverage of the Full Throttle Real Sim Racing Cup Series on LSRTV and iRacing Live. 2 caution flags thus far as we get set to restart this race with the number 88 Major Avenger. Faridar is in control for the second restart in a row. 27 laps going to be complete, 98 laps still to go. Complete running order up at the top of your screen, but it is Faridar's and Comstock now on the front row. Guerrilla Bowie back row 2, no change for Colson Bermuda as your pole sitter. Once again restarting back on row number 3. That'll be inside P5. Pace car's going to dive down and away. Freenar's only waited about a second last time. It worked pretty good for him, but as the pace car already dives off, a little bit more of a hesitation, just as smooth. Freenar's leads the charge as we go up to the gears to turn 1.
Freenarge is down and away by about 3 car lengths over the battle for second, which is now on between Michael Guerrilla on the bottom of the racetrack, David Comstock on the outside, and here comes Colson Bermuda trying to make something happen as well. He gets a great run coming up off of turn 2 that time. He's door to door with Comstock for the 3rd position. He throws the car down into turn 3. This is his best opportunity to try to make that pass, but it's not going to stick as he had to check up to come off the quarter. and that's going to allow David Comstock to jump back ahead of him and hold on to that third position, and now he's at risk of possibly losing that position to Brandon Bowie, as Bowie looks to the outside but wasn't able to make the move, so he will now be battling with Dylan Jones right behind him.
Yeah, the 43 of Bowie kind of went high, and it almost looked like that was Bermudez throwing a block, but I think he just wanted to get a handle on it, and now way out of the gas is Brandon Bowie, as he was way too hot out of the quarter, lost the back end on that car and get way out of the throttle. So not only will he lose the fight with Jones, but if Falkenham and the L.L.C Gabe Wood get a complete passes as well. He was nearly side by side for fourth. Instead, he falls to seventh and is still in a hornet's nest there. A lot going on for third, meanwhile, with the battle with Comstock 3 wide, as here comes Bermudez trying to go up the inside of the racetrack, but the big money winner is Dylan Jones. Rockets from fifth to third through the middle.
He saw a opportunity and he took it. He knew that he had good tires for the moment, and he gassed it and went to that third place position, I believe it was. Yes, it was. And now they're starting to single file out a little bit, except for, I believe that is, it's right next to Gabe Wood, still battling it out, just single filed out for that front stretch, and then got back into that hornet's nest. Spencer Preet, Brandon Bowie, and Gabe Wood all battling for that sixth place position. David Comstock right in front of them. So we'll see how this works out, and you just got to think about tires and how much they're wearing right now.
Yeah, that's the concern, is we haven't really had a very long run thus far, although if they keep racing like this, Brian, I don't really think that's going to be the concern. But if you're really driving hard like we're seeing out of these drivers now, you have to wonder what's going to be left if we get 20, 25, 30 laps away from this point. Seventh on back is where all of the fun is. Spencer Preet is one of the drivers who got a spot from Brandon Bowie when he nearly fenced it off of the quarter, but the 43 going to take that one back, this time in 3 and 4. Very good job at carrying that speed outside, so close to the wall on corner exit, but you can give the spot to Bowie, so that'll shuffle up a couple of positions. Preet falls to 7th, and then Gabe Wood tucked in behind at 8th, and a battle with Daniel Falkenham and Shane Ewing 10th and 11th, not on that far behind either.
These guys know that the tires wear out very quickly at this racetrack, and on the restarts, that's your best opportunity to try to get some track position and gain a few positions, because you have that extra grip in the tires. You can actually make some moves that at this point of the run now you're not going to be able to make as easily. So they are going to be very aggressive on every restart to try to get as much as they can. You're probably going to see these guys be more aggressive on the restart than they will be throughout the entire race overall, just because of that fact. They know how important it's going to be to try to get those positions. I think that's why we saw Colson Bermudez be so aggressive on that restart as well. He knows he's got a fast race car. He qualified on the pole. He had top 5 practice speeds. He knows he's got a good car, but now he has to get that track position back. He's sitting back in the 4th position right now, and he's maintaining a pretty good speed right now, pretty close to what our race leader is running. As a matter of fact, our race leader just ran almost an identical lap time to him just the last time by. This time by, however, he was about a 10th quicker, so it's still very close in speeds, and he knows that if he can get that track position back, he's probably got a shot at that 88 car.
And that's the goal, is again just to kind of wear it down a little bit. I don't think you're going to make up that what is a 1.049 second deficit in the blink of an eye, but make a couple of moves here and get into a rhythm, Trev. But I think that the 2 relatively early caution flags that we've seen tonight as well have kind of disrupted these guys from getting into a little bit of a rhythm, especially if you're somebody like a Bermudez. You've gotten roughed up a little bit. You keep having to go through the motions on the restarts and whatnot. It is difficult to just kind of settle in. Dylan Jones, no intentions of doing so. He took a peek to the inside and really into 1 and 2. It looks like he'll go for the full send this time in 3. But again, so difficult to be able to get back on the throttle off of the corner down on that yellow line, so it's not going to work.
And the harder you run into that third turn corner, it's going to be harder to get that car off and try not to hit it, the outside wall coming out of turn number 4. We've seen a multiple amount of cars. Brandon Bowie just a few laps ago, you couldn't even fit a piece of paper between him and the wall. He got so close. So just got to make sure that you're able to hit your marks, and I'm sure that Andrew Freenard is loving this battle behind him, because this is just letting him pull away a little bit quicker.
It is. It's great news for Freenars, because the more they fight, the quicker that gap is going to grow. It's already gone up 0.3 since this fight started. The gap now 1.334 seconds. So, listen, the 88 machine's got the crew and the spotters all letting them know, hey, take it easy. You can maybe even, Brian, when you see cars behind you, not take it easy. Maybe that's not the right way to put it, but you definitely don't need to push that race car. You've got a good enough gap. I don't think you're really stretching that machine to the limits, but when there's people fighting behind you, maybe you can take it a little bit easier. Just try to maintain that gap. I'm not sure you do yourself much service burning up the rubber right now, trying to get off to some, 3, 4, 5 second lead by any means. I think when you know that something's going on behind you, as Jones goes to the inside again, and he got pretty side by side in the center there, as the 17 once again rolls back into the gas quicker and will pull away off of quarter number 2. I think Farinars can do a good job of just managing what I think is a fairly comfortable gap he's got right now.
Well, yeah, and like you said, he doesn't really have to push that car very hard right now, knowing that there's a side-by-side battle going on right behind him as Guerrilla gets very sideways coming off the corner. That's going to open this door for Dylan Jones now. He's able to pull up even with the 17 machine as they head to turn 1. But he's down on the bottom of the racetrack where it's going to be extremely difficult to pass, and if Guerrilla doesn't give the position up, he's not going to get it very easily. And you can see right there, Guerrilla fights back on the outside line and is actually able to clear Dylan Jones to hold on to that second position. But yeah, while all this is going on, Andrew Farinars knows that he does not have to run that car very hard. Just back your times off just a little bit just to manage those tires, especially that right front tire, because that's the one taking the biggest beating right now, and make sure that you have something left. That way, in case Dylan Jones has more speed than you're ready for and he gets into that second position, you've got an opportunity to try to fend him off once he actually gets there. As they continue this side-by-side battle, Dylan Jones back to the bottom of the racetrack. He is bound and determined that he's going to take that second position away.
He is pretty committed to it at the moment, and again, you can still see that he's down on that very low line up against the yellow line. And we saw earlier in this one, not to pick on Cozy, Trevin, but we saw a couple of cars get around Michael Cozy because they were able to get positioned on the inside and then run that regular line in between that bottom seam and that second seam, which is basically where you'd be if you were single file. I think Dylan Jones's persistence is going to finally pay off. It does. Maybe 9th time is the charm in that one, as he completes the pass now and moves into second position. So showing that if you have the perseverance, you can finally make it work down low. But that just goes to show you that everybody's got their own unique style when they try to make that move. A couple of different ideas out there.
Yeah, and I think just Guerrilla wanted to let him pass, probably just to let him say, yeah, you're going to be burning your tires off a little bit more, so I might be able to get that position back if we go for a longer green flag run. And, all that battling, just let Andrew Farinars pull away a little bit and let Colson Bermudez pull in to them a little bit. I saw him coming into the picture a little bit more, and there he is, just a few car lengths behind him. So maybe he's going to take a look and see what he can do with Michael Guerrilla pretty soon here.
That's what he'll hope for, of course, with Michael Guerrilla now having lost that position. Maybe he does a little bit of scouting, watches what the 11 Dylan Jones has been doing, because obviously, Brian, if he's able to, if the 17 of Guerrilla and he makes a couple of moves to the inside, he holds you off once, he holds you off twice, and eventually, you keep successfully defending it, but he's able to get up alongside you every single time. You have to wonder, how fast is that 11 Dylan Jones? So now we'll be able to see, as Jones tries to make up the 1.5 second gap to Farinars, just how good is he? And maybe Guerrilla could maybe learn a couple of things from being behind him and watching his line.
Oh, he absolutely can learn something from him, and what he did is exactly what I expected him to do. He raced him hard for a couple of laps, and then he finally conceded that battle, much to what you just said, so that he could get behind him and try to see what he's doing differently from himself and see if he can't learn something from that 11 machine. But the one thing that I have noticed that Dylan Jones did and Colson Bermudez, and now we see Guerrilla, is they went to the bottom of the racetrack, the very, very bottom groove of the racetrack, down in both ends of the racetrack. What that is doing, or the reason why that works so well for Dylan Jones, is if you look at everybody else, they're running about a groove up off of that bottom. And if everybody is running in that groove, all the heat is in that part of the track. You go to the bottom of the racetrack, it's cooler than the rest of it. You have more grip, you can make that move work. That's why Dylan Jones was able to make that move and get past Michael Guerrilla. And that's why you see Colson Bermudez continuing to do it. And now you see Guerrilla following them down as well. He figured out that right now all the speed is down on the bottom of the racetrack. And oh, by the way, Dylan Jones is faster than our race leader right now. In the last 2 laps, he's cut almost 3/10 off the race lead.
Well, it is interesting to think that normally you would expect drivers to start low, rubber gets put down onto the racetrack, they go high, but again, almost seems like, listen, just the more you work on it, and if you're stubborn and you keep running the bottom, you're going to get a little bit of rubber placed down there, and you're going to get something to cook. And a good fight right now with the 42 of David Comstock. He's trying to hold off the 00 of Gabe Wood. That 37 of Spencer Pretrevin was able to make a move on him not all that long ago. And now it looks like Gabe Wood's going to get the job done. Comstock doesn't look that stable off for the corner. Eberhard also going to jump into the mix here. That 42 Chevy could lose 3 spots in as many laps if Eberhard completes the move here. And those are cars passing on the outside. So inside, outside, doesn't matter. Just depends, I think, who's got the better race car right now. The line is really spreading out. And, well, as they say, that Eberhard got way too hot on exit and had to roll out of the gas. So for the moment, Comstock still in P8.
And we currently have a battle going on for P number 10 as well. We had 2 different groups battling it out. The group in front filed themselves out quicker than this group. The number 1 of Daniel Fockingham is battling with Cozy Jr. as well as Shane Ewing in the mix. They've been going at it for the past couple of laps. So we are seeing now, as you've said, some rubber has been laid down. So multiple lanes are starting to come into effect right now, and we can see that clearly. And the tires are starting to become a big problem, as we saw Michael Cozy Jr. get a little bit sideways coming off the corner. Daniel Eberhard is going to dive down, make it 3 wide between the 42 and the 00 alongside with him. That's going to file out to a 2 wide contest, and the 42 gets so sideways coming off of turn number 4. That's where we're seeing a lot of trouble, Evan.
Was awfully close to coming down into the naughty Daniel Eberhard. Eberhard dove low to get out of the way, and he's going to be able to complete that pass. So Eberhard swaps with Comstock for 8 and 9. And just as you think it might settle down for a minute, side by side in front now. Gabe Wood was chasing down Spencer Preet when they were both chasing down David Comstock. They took turns making moves, but the 00 does not want to sit around, although this is really going to become a 4-car fight, nearly 2 sets of 2x2 in this lead pack of those 2 that we were keeping an eye on. All of this is for 6th, 7th, 8th, and 9th. In single file up for the moment, but far from done. A battle that's 5 seconds off for the race lead. We are not there yet, Brian, but should note, Andrew Farinars' gap for the race lead is down to 0.8 of a second. So Dylan Jones is picking away. Intervals up at the top of the screen. He's not there challenging yet. Just keeping you updated, though, as we watch the action in mid-pack.
Yeah, he's gaining on the race leader, as is Colson Bermuda, as he's cut his gap down from 2.6 seconds down to 2.3. So also trying to gain as he gains another 10th right there. But this battle, like as we've been talking about, between David Comstock and Daniel Eberhard, it is just continuing to rage on. But it looks like maybe Eberhard has the advantage, and as soon as I say that, Comstock gets back in the gas, gets a great run coming up off turn 2, and he's able to get back to the outside of that number 90 machine, and having that outside line is going to give him a bit of an advantage because he can get back into the gas, and he can try to pinch down Eberhard should he choose to keep him from getting the run up off the corner. But Eberhard actually got a pretty solid run. Comstock gets sideways again, and that might have been the slip up that Eberhard needed, and indeed it was, to move finally ahead and clear David Comstock for that 8th position. And Comstock now will fall back to the 9th spot, and he just continues to slip and slide around. And that's the nature of this track, because we have the older surface, and these tires really get wore out. The right rear tire, especially after a long enough green flag run, will really get beat up, and it is extremely hard to get back into the gas coming off the corner, especially when you're battling side by side with somebody, because you try to get back in the gas quicker than you want, as though Gabe Wood gets sideways coming off turn 4, and you just can't make it stick, just like we saw with Gabe right there.
We've seen a lot of drivers getting that kind of slideaways that we just saw at a Gabe Woods machine, who, again, not all that long ago, trying to get a move on Spencer Preet, possibly making a move into P6. Instead, he falls to P9 with that most recent slide. Meanwhile, the battle for the race lead is on, because Dylan Jones has raced up and caught Andrew Farinars, and he is coming in hot as we complete lap number 54. Thought the 11 might have been looking low. He'll stay high and try to set up as they go into the corner. No doubt that PowerTech Ford Fusion, fastest car on the racetrack. As he takes a look to the inside, left-hand side, tries to pull the speed down the back straightaway. Nothing quite yet. Let's see how committed he is into turn number 3. Farinars doesn't necessarily block, but he'll protect that middle lane. And still now the 11 digging down low in a battle for the race lead.
And the 11 of Dylan Jones is just trying everything that he can in his hand. Andrew Freenars might have saved his tires a little bit more, and now he's starting to use them up later in this run, trying to defend his position against Dylan Jones. Dylan Jones, again, just following every single move, maybe tweaking it a little bit, starting a little bit higher and exiting a little bit higher. He's now to the right or the left rear quarter panel. He's going to be side by side going into the corner. Who can get back to the gas quicker? I believe that's going to be Andrew Freenars because he is on that higher side, but who can get the better exit as well? He is moving in ever so slightly. He definitely has the faster car on the track right now. That's the number 11 of Dylan Jones. Try and go for 3 in a row here at the RSR Full Throttle Cup Series.
And on the outside of the racetrack, the 88 machine of Freenars trying to defend. And you could see him get into the gas sooner, but the car was just sliding up the track. You could really tell that this is the longest green flag run we've seen all night. And I think Guerrilla being a second and a half behind at the moment is going to be a little bit too far to maybe jump on this side-by-side fight and take advantage of it, try to close in on these two. But in the meantime, they're going to continue to do battle side-by-side. Now it's a dead heat down to quarter number 1. But again, Dylan Jones not trying to push that outside car up at all. He goes way low on the entry, and he'll slide wide off for the corner. And Andrew Freenars showing very good defensive skills under the immense pressure right now.
Indeed he is, but the problem that's going on right now is while these guys continue to battle it on, right behind them, Michael Guerrilla and Colson Bermudez, as well as Brandon Bowie, are all slowly beginning to creep back into this picture because they were over 2 seconds behind these guys before this battle started. Well, now Michael Guerrilla is down to 1.3 seconds behind them, so the longer that this battle goes on, the closer they're going to get, and we may end up having more than just these two battling for the race lead. And for Dylan Jones, that's got to create a little bit of urgency because you do not want to have these guys catching up to you and making it a 3 or a 4 or even a 5 car battle. That's going to make it that much harder for you to get to the race lead. And so he really needs to try to step it up just a little bit. As here he gets a great run coming off turn 4, and this might be the move that's going to give him the race lead. He gets to the outside of Andrew Freenars. That's going to give him the preferred groove down here in turn 1. And as he goes wide down in 1 and 2, Freenars tries to slide up. Can he get the slide job done? No, he's not. And Dylan Jones is going to have the advantage coming off turn 2. This should propel him to the race lead down here in 3.
Now it's a role reversal. The 88's going to try to come from behind on the inside of the racetrack, but I just don't see it happening. I think that the 11 being pinched down with a better car was the equalizer, and Dylan Jones has got it. And it was the point that Brian had made earlier, Trevor. You might just have to go outside to get a pass for the race lead, any pass really here at Kentucky done. And even though we've seen the inside of the racetrack get better, it is still, I don't think, the best line. I think that top side is the way to go. And Dylan Jones to the race lead at lap number 61, coming from way back in 13th position after not taking a time into qualifying to the race lead, just moments away from crossing the halfway point.
I think what's happening is during the beginning of the run, you'll have so much tires that you can run on that bottom lane and be able to get that gas back to the metal so quickly. And then once the tires wear off, you got to start running that outside groove. And once you get on that bottom side, it's game over. So brilliant move by Dylan Jones against Andrew Freenars. And now he's going to be able to set sail and just continue to use it. Maybe thinking about pit stops coming up because this has been the longest green flag run of the night.
Longest green flag run of the night. And as of this time by, we are halfway home from the Kentucky Speedway. So as we've crossed the halfway point in tonight's race, let's take a look at our iRacing Midway Race Break, brought to you by iRacing, the world's premier online racing game with professionally organized racing from NASCAR, IMSA, and many more. At lap number 63, Dylan Jones, your new race leader, leads all cars at the moment. He's now starting to pull away about a half a second on top of Andrew Freenars, who sits P2. Michael Guerrilla, a rather uneventful evening, still sits third in a good position. Colson Bermudez was able to get a couple spots back after contact in the race leading position earlier tonight. He's still P4 though, 1.7 seconds off for the race lead. Brandon Bowie tucked in behind him, scored a P5. Daniel Everhart, somebody else to keep an eye on. Everhart up 10 spots to P6, but would probably need a couple of race starts to make some more noise. He's in front of David Comstock, who is in P7. Daniel Fogelham in behind P8. You got Gabe Wood at 9th, then Lionel Callisto in 10th.
Currently running in the 11th position right now is Shane Ewing. followed by Michael Cozy Jr., who's fallen back to the 12th position after starting up inside the top 10, just not having the night that he was looking to have. Troy Haight is running in the 13th position, followed by Brian Chambliss running in 14th. Tom Morano is 15th, and he's also the last car on the lead lap right now. He's 26 seconds behind our race leader. Everybody else is at least one lap down. You got Scott McClendon running 16th. Spencer Preet has fallen to 17th, one lap down as well. Andrew T. Jones has fallen to 18th, and it looks like Dwayne Vincent, who is still on the racetrack but is multiple laps down, he is 12 laps down in the 19th position, and he rounds out our 19 car field here tonight. And that's been a look at your iRacing Midway Race Break. For more information on the wide variety of sim racing possibilities online, visit iracing.com to sign up today. And there are a ton of promotions going on right now, Evan Pasoko, that members can get on here and have access to some pretty incredible content. Of course, we've got all the dirt stuff that we've got going on, and if you really want to, you can jump in and possibly join the action here on Monday nights for the Real Sim Racing Full Throttle Cup Series.
Yeah, and again, you can get up to, I think it's 40% on new memberships, and no matter if you only want to give the service a try for a 3-month subscription, or if you're ready to lock in and maybe try to compete at a more full-time basis and work your way up in the sim racing ladder, maybe join something like this Full Throttle Real Sim Racing Cup Series and get a 2-month subscription. That's all 40% off. New memberships only. More info at iracing.com/membership. As we kind of look back into the picture now, Brian, and I'll go back to you for this one. Longest green flag run of the night. We are certainly seeing that the tires are wearing a lot more than what we saw earlier. Obviously, that's going to be what you expect to see in a longer run of the night. But where do we sit pit stop situation-wise? Because the last time by, we were at 60 laps to go in this race. So I'm assuming we're pretty safely into a one-stop to the end window. But what are we going to be expecting drivers to be headed down to the pit lane?
Well, the window is actually just opened up, because you can run anywhere from 60 to about 63 laps on a tank of gas, depending on how hard you drive the car at the beginning of the run. So I think any time now you may see some of these guys begin to come in, and it's going to be a cat and mouse game at this point. And as we talk about that, Brandon Bowie has made his way to pit road, and I believe right here, Evan Soko, this is going to force the hand of everybody, as it looks like Daniel Eberhardt is also going to follow him to pit road. And now that we've had one driver elect to come to pit road for service, he was only 3 seconds behind the race leader. He's going to be about 2 seconds a lap quicker than the rest of these guys out here. I believe it's going to force everybody to come in very quickly.
You're looking at about a 2.5 second fall off on old tires to fresh tires, so this may, the undercut as we always call it, you try to come down pit road and get the advantage, might force the hands of a couple of drivers. Faridars from second, Guerrilla, no takers, Jones, Faridars, Guerrilla, and Bermudez. 1, 2, 3, 4, no takers as they all stay out for at least one extra lap. And what that would probably mean is, Trevor, that the cars who led off this cycle to pit stops would cycle through to the race lead, because right now they're out there and they're making up time and they're moving forward now. So when these drivers come down in pit, they'll probably not go to the race lead. Now, a 60-lap run is on the longer end of green flag runs that you'll see in this Full Throttle Real Sim Racing Cup Series. So it might all balance out at the end, but Dylan Jones obviously has the number in his mind. Otherwise, he would have reacted immediately like I think we were expecting him to.
Yeah, now it's just going to become a whole entire cluster on the track with cars cycling in and out until we get everything cycled through. So just got to be cautious of that, making sure that you're blending in perfectly and you're not messing up anything coming into the pit lane. So we'll have to see how everybody works out coming into pit lane.
We'll see how long it is going to take for those drivers to come down to the pit lane. Brian, we saw it looked like an immediate reactionary move on the pit stops from Eberhardt. He followed Bowie right down pit road, and he did lose a little bit of time to him because, again, just by nature, you could be on somebody's bumper driving down to the exit of pit road. They're going to be getting onto the gas before you. So Bowie does gain a little bit of time, but I think Eberhardt pitted because he was pitting. It looked like he kind of made a dive down, but he saw the 43 coming down. I am a little bit surprised, though, that Jones, Faridars, Guerrilla, Bermudez, those guys didn't immediately come in, and not as much so that, you know, it's that tire disadvantage because, yes, they're going to pit, they're going to lose the race lead. I think the run is long enough for them to make up that difference, but I think I'm more so surprised because pitting now just kind of splits, assuming we go green to the end, from the last race start to the end of this race, kind of splits it in half, which is where I would think you want to be.
Yes and no, because you know, you also want to think about, you want to have the freshest tires at the end of this race, and our last caution was around lap 24 and they went back green on lap 28, so they can go about 60 laps, which puts them right around lap 85 to 86, somewhere in that range. So they can technically go about another 10 to 11, maybe 12 laps or so. And if you can do that, then you're looking at only having about a 45 lap run to the finish, depending on when you come to pit road. That makes it a little bit easier on your tires, because you're not going to have as many laps at the end of the run. You can actually race a little bit harder when you get to that point, assuming it stays green to the end. And I'm like you, I think the race has enough laps left in it where even if they went and ran this thing out of gas, they have enough time where they can make that gap back up. But the downside to this is if we get through the cycle of green flag pit stops, Brandon Bowie, Daniel Eberhardt will most likely assume the race lead and second position. If we get a quick caution after everybody has pitted, they're going to lose that track position to Brandon Bowie and Daniel Eberhardt, and now they're going to have to race for that position on equal tires with them when they go back green. So it's a very difficult game to play right here. It's one of those things, you know that there's that risk that you could have that happen to you, but you just have to have a strategy and you have to stick to it when you're in this type of a situation.
And we continue to watch drivers fall off at the lead lap. Some of them actually just getting lapped, but again, a lot of those drivers, the folks who have already pitted, I think that cut line is Brandon Bowie on down, being the drivers who have already pitted, although he just passed up Tom Morano, so you're starting to get a lot of those names mixed up in there. But Bowie is the benchmark right now for the drivers who have already come down to the pit lane and pitted. And check out the speed difference. He's going to be catching up to Dylan Jones here very shortly once he gets around Spencer Breed, who almost wrecked that car again. The 37 took a big slot in the grass a couple of laps ago, almost did it again. Bowie's going to be able to get on by him without incident. And Bowie's already on almost 10-lap-old tires, but watch the speed difference when he comes up to Dylan Jones. Very obvious, fresh tires, much better than older tires. And again, Jones giving away a lot of time. He's really banking on having those fresher tires late. And just as the 43 goes by him, Dylan Jones down pit road for the race lead. Farinar's in from second. Guerrilla, therefore, from third, going to become your race leader.
Yeah, and I think they were just trying to bank on a caution coming out and then everybody a lap down, staying a lap down, and still being able to hold on to that track position while having fresher tires, but it just didn't work out for them. So Dylan Jones and Andrew Freenard's down and away into the pit box, and you got to make sure that everything is flawless for you. We've already had Troy Hay and Colson Bermudez already have his night go from bad to worse, as he's had black flags assessed to him for driving through too many pit stalls. Dylan Jones out of pit lane, and Andrew Freenard's quickly behind him.
He comes into the pit lane, and that'll kind of cycle everything through. Daniel Falkenham now going to become your race leader, but I think the big thing to keep in mind is where all of these drivers ended up. Brandon Bowie right now cycling through and exiting off of corner number 4. You compare that to your race leader who really wanted to stay out, didn't want to obviously give this thing up, and trying to, at least from what we could tell, had pretty much a basic number in mind that I'm not coming down pit road until he comes by and passes me, and it seemed like that's pretty much exactly what happened as Brandon Bowie was able to complete that pass, and then right down to the pit lane came Dylan Jones. But in comparison, Dylan Jones is in turn number 2 at the moment. Brandon Bowie basically 3 and 4. So Brian, it's about a third of a racetrack that you've given up by staying out. 79 laps complete. It's a 125-lap race. A lot of time to make it up, but it is a big deficit. Stark contrast to the clean air he had.
Yeah, it's about a 10-second difference between Brandon Bowie and Dylan Jones when it's all said and done. Actually, about 10 seconds right now between the two. It's going to be a very big gap to make up, but at this point, you look at the lap times, and it's kind of flipped now because Brandon Bowie just ran a 31.63, and Dylan Jones ran a 30.89, so he's almost a second a lap quicker. So based off of that number, he has plenty of time to make up that 10-second gap, and I'm sure that his crew chief and his spotter are telling him, look, you still got 45 laps to go in this race. You're almost a second a lap quicker. You're going to get there. Do not stress about that gap. Just hit your marks, save your tires because you might need them at the end of this thing, and don't make any mistakes at this point because he's going to run that gap down pretty easily, as Brandon Bowie is now the race leader, as it looks like Daniel Falkenham finally gave up the race lead to come to pit road, and that's going to cycle things back through now. So Brandon Bowie's got the lead. He's got about a 1.5-second lead over Daniel Eberhardt. And now at this point for these two drivers, This is where they want this thing to go about another 5 or 6 laps, and then they're going to want to see a caution so that they can hold on to this track position, but they can get on equal tires with everybody else, so now they can actually try to race them for it. Because at this point, they're sitting ducks. Dylan Jones is going to get there. Andrew Freenarge is going to get there. There's nothing they can do about that. They have to just bank on that caution now.
And we saw just last Tuesday that be a race-winning strategy in the NASCAR Pecan Free Series, is staying out, defending that track position, catching a yellow. And then we saw how important tires would be, Trevor. Yes, the drivers who have already pitted are on fresher tires than the guys up front, but if we were to get a yellow, everybody comes down pit road. So it really doesn't matter where you came from, how you got there. The running order on the scoring pylon is going to be how you race it out to the end. So no doubt you do have drivers like that that are trying to pull off that little bit of a strategy, but for somebody like a Brandon Bowie right now with the 43 machine, he's in a perfect spot, and the likes of McClendon and some of those other drivers kind of holding out hope here for a few more laps.
Yeah, and just goes along with what Brian said. If the caution comes out, it will change everything, and I don't think he wants to see that. I'm pretty sure Dylan does. So it's just a mixed bag of what people want to see. But Dylan Jones already worked his way up into 3rd position, just making that pass of Scott McClendon. So he's running them down. He's 7.5 seconds back. We'll see what happens as he crosses the line. But it's that mix of, do I want to use those tires up right now to try and catch them, or do I want to save them? It's really just a hard decision that you have to make, especially at a track as brutal as this one, with every single bump and turn working against him. And now he knocks off another 0.5 second on Brandon Bowie, so he's closing in and closing in fast.
Closing in and closing in fast. Is it going to be fast enough? Would then be that question. The gap right now between Bowie Eberhardt, 1.5 seconds, and then the gap between he and the 11 Dylan Jones is right now at 7 seconds, and well, a good way to tell you just how fast somebody's lap is compared to somebody else. Let's watch the interval this time on the line from 7 seconds to 6.3. So 7/10, Brian Macklin, faster the last time around. It is going to fall off a little bit, but with 40 laps still left in this I think the 11's in a good spot. The 37 in the meantime, Preet again with problems on the front straightaway. It's about the 3rd time he's taken a trip down through the grass just by getting sideways off of the corner, and somehow none of those incidents about the wreck that race car brought out a yellow.
Did not bring out a yellow, and since we're talking about that timing and scoring, a great way that people watching at home can actually get access to that is by going to one of our partners for our broadcast every night, and that is Joe Real Timing. And that coverage of the Full Throttle Real Sim Racing Cup Series is brought to you by Joe Real Timing, the official timing software of LSRTV. Whether you spend your time on the sim, behind the wheel, on the pit box from the spotter stand, JRT is the go-to software for iRacing timing and scoring analytics. Get yourself a basic download for free, or get the pro version today at joe-real-timing.com. And that is a really solid program to use, Evan Pasoko, because it gives you that type of timing and scoring. You can see real-time difference between these drivers on the racetrack. You can see when they come to pit road. You can even see if they take 2 tires versus 4 tires. A lot of very cool features that we can get from Joe Real Timing, and it's something that anybody can use, and it's extremely easy to use as well.
I can promise you the timing for the last couple of laps for Spencer Preet not going to be fun. He had another big slide at the turn 4, but you're exactly right. Useful for somebody like us who covering these races, and the 37 is going to wreck here before we get through this thing. But, as well, if you've got a driver who's, have a crew chief or a spotter, especially when you get to some of the upper echelons of sim racing, certainly useful information to track what's going on with you, but the cars around you. But I think the wheels have kind of fallen off for Spencer Preet here, and he's gone all the way to the back of the lead lap. That little gamble's not going to pay off, and well, just a tough way for this one to end for Spencer Preet. If he finishes this race, which I don't guarantee at the moment, only Troy Haight is stationary in 19th. Vincent Bermudez, our other drivers on track, although actually now Colson Bermudez, the number 23 machine, is no longer on track after getting cycled out on some of the strategy. That car came down to the pit lane, and he was black flagged for driving through too many pit stalls on entry, and that took away his hopes at winning this race, Trevin, so he called it a night. It's been a little bit since we've seen Bermudez in this Full Throttle Real Racing Cup Series. Broke the penalty of going through too many pit stalls on pit entry. 3 is that number, so his night is done. Tough break for him after qualifying on the pole. Hopefully, for his sake, we'll see him back next week.
And watching Spencer Pre over and over, and he just cannot handle that race car coming out of turn 2. And there he goes. He pulls it behind the wall. He just had such struggles tonight at the Kentucky Motor Speedway. He cannot hold it. And he just bites the bullet and takes it down and away into the garage area. Something possibly wrong with that machine.
And I think, Brian, when you get sideways one time, you know, you heat up the tires, and then we really saw with him, he kind of got stuck in a bad cycle where he had 2-3 really bad laps, and I'm sure there was very little left on those tires to the point where, I mean, you're like tiptoeing on black ice. You either come in to get new tires. At that point, you're 3 laps down, and somebody else who gets caught in a tough situation. I kind of relate that with Berita as a penalty. Preet having issues with his car. Next thing you know, 2 drivers dropping out of this race as we close into the home stretch.
Well, and that was to my point earlier on about these guys wanting to stretch this run just a little bit as we got a battle for P2 as here comes Dylan Jones to the inside of Daniel Eberhardt, and it's going to be quick work for the 11 car as he's easily able to make his way around Daniel Eberhardt to take that second position away. And now he's just 2 seconds behind our race leader to get to that race lead, and it's going to be just a matter of time. But for a guy like Dylan Jones, Andrew Friedars, these other guys that went just a little bit further than Brandon Bowie and Daniel Eberhardt did, they didn't want to have to run this entire last run a full 60 laps on that set of tires because of what we just saw Spencer Preet going through. The tires just get so wore out, the right rear gets really beat up, and it's very hard on these guys to continue to go for that long without having the issues that we saw that 37 car having.
Without those issues for certain, that seems to be a key in this race, Trevin, that I wouldn't have expected really talking all that much about earlier tonight because we had those 2 quick caution flags and, you know, kind of thinking, well, what's the complexion of this race going to be? Is it going to be a lot of stop and start? And although it's not, again, the largest car count, you have a race like Kentucky, a track that lends itself to being a little bit more aggressive, and you got drivers bouncing around, you get into each other. It happens, but certainly once we had that restart, which was at this point some 60 or so laps to go through a cycle green flag pit stops, the complexion of this race has very much changed to a much more strategic one.
Yeah, and this is just, I believe that it was just just a couple laps to get it under your belts and figure out how this track is working. And once they figured it out and knew how much limits they can push around other cars and how it was going to affect them inside traffic, they figured it out and they were able to run their race, log their laps, and before they knew it, there was pit stops coming up, and it's just turned into a strategic race. So Dylan Jones has done a phenomenal job at pulling off his strategy, and now he's hunting down Brandon Bowie.
Hunting down Brandon Bowie, and he is going to be there, assuming that this race doesn't have any sort of late race drama. We are going to be in a position where battle for the race lead, maybe the last battle for the race lead, is coming up right here, right now. Obviously, that rate of ascent is slowed down a little bit. Last lap for Brandon Bowie was a 32.5, but still with a 32.1 for Dylan Jones. He is flying up to the back bumper, the 43 of Brandon Bowie. And I don't even think this is a situation, Brian, where if that 11 gets stuck on the inside, it's going to make much of a difference. Here he comes, Dylan Jones, sticking to his guns. Didn't want to make a hasty reaction with a trip down to the pit lane at lap number 98 with 27 laps to go. The PowerTech Ford goes back to the race lead.
And with these, as you mentioned, no challenge at all from Brandon Bowie. And right now, if I'm Brandon Bowie, and even if I'm Daniel Eberhardt, I would want to make a strategy play at this point. You know you're not going to win the race. You both have a pretty good points cushion on making it into the playoffs. I would be gambling. I'd come back to pit road right now. At this point, you'd be about 2.5 seconds a lap quicker than Dylan Jones. You would have to make up about 40 seconds. I think you'd have time at 2.5 seconds left, or a lap over 25, 26 laps. You'd have time to do it. It's a very big gamble because if we get a caution, you're going to get trapped a lap down. But it's an opportunity to go for the race victory, and I think I'd be willing to take that chance and just see if it's going to work out. However, I don't think either of these guys are going to do it. I think you'll see them stay on the racetrack, but if I was in their position, I would have come to pit road as soon as I got passed by that 11 car.
So we'll see if they do heed to that advice and how the final, now 26 laps of this race is going to play out, but we're certainly going to see more positions shuffle up against some of the drivers who went with the short pit, again slower on the speed, going to drop back. Some of the drivers who pitted later still to make up some positions, so a lot still to be settled inside of the top 10 positions with 12 cars on the lead lap. At lap number 100, Dylan Jones looking pretty comfortable, and everybody should be good on fuel to the end of this race. What we'll do is take one final opportunity to step aside and go LSRTV non-stop. Dylan Jones is looking for a third straight win in the Full Throttle Real Estate Racing Cup Series. He's 25 laps away. We'll see if he can do it when we come back to Kentucky. You're watching the Full Throttle Real Estate Racing Cup Series at LSRTV, your home for sim racing.
I'm driving the number 20 JGR Toyota Xfinity car this weekend. Really great opportunity here at New Hampshire at my home track. Over the past 2 weeks, I've been on iRacing, practicing a little bit here and there with the modified and the NASCAR Xfinity car. So it's been a lot of fun. It's been a great tool for me to kind of get used to that stock car body again and be prepared for the race today. Well, yeah, it's a mile long, so the draft kind of plays into effect here with the modifieds. Punches a big hole in the air, and we run restrictor plates. So it makes a big difference. Just really fast, and it's our Daytona. So that's what's great about it, and we have a fast car for tomorrow. I think the biggest thing is they're heavier cars. The tire's a lot different. And the way you go about setting them up is a lot different. They use all 4 tires more than a modified, where we typically drive off the right rear, you know, so. Well, actually, it's funny. I raced NASCAR race in 2003 before iRacing came about. And then when iRacing came about, my friend Kevin Iannarelli, who works at iRacing, kind of told me, hey, man, you need to switch over to this. And when I did, I was like, oh, my God, this is like real life. So I started using it as a tool of mine to really prepare for modified races, whether it was Stafford or Thompson or Loudon, Bristol, and then obviously the Xfinity Series last year, going to road courses, trying to get laps, and use it as a tool that can get me as prepared as I could be without actually doing it. So it's been great.
We're back live from the Kentucky Speedway coverage of the Full Throttle Real Estate Racing Cup Series at LSRTV, as always, is powered by English Auto L.L.C, a full-service luxury automobile repair center in Odenton, Maryland, conveniently located to serve both the Baltimore and D.C. markets. English Auto specializes in Jaguar, Land Rover, Mercedes, Volvos, and BMW service. Founded in 2007, English Auto is in its 11th year of business, and with a staff that has over 60 years of combined experience in the automotive service industry. English Auto has an A+ rating from the Better Business Bureau. For more information, you can visit them online, www.englishauto.us, and through social media, facebook.com/English Auto, and on Twitter at English Auto LLC. Proud title sponsor of the Full Throttle Real Estate Racing Cup Series, powered by English Auto. As we bring you back into the LSRTV booth, Evan Pasoko, Brian Backlund, Trevin Valderrama with you upstairs with Cisco Scaramuza in the production trailer. Less than 20 laps to go in this Kentucky 125. And Brian, we teased it a little bit coming into tonight. Dylan Jones entered this evening second in the Segment 2 championship standings, but he has been on a tear. Back-to-back wins, Chicago, Daytona, and he is not that far away, and with a pretty hefty gap, 2.6 seconds back to Andrew Farinars for going 3 in a row.
And barring a caution to bunch these guys up, this is basically Dylan Jones' race to lose at this point. As you mentioned, that 2.6 second gap over Andrew Farinars. Andrew has not been closing that gap down, and at this point, if he was going to close that gap down, he'd have to do it in a very significant manner over the next handful of laps to even have a chance. And for the rest of these guys, you're just kind of hoping for a caution at this point to bunch everything back up and give you an opportunity to try to challenge Dylan Jones for this race lead. But Dylan has been extremely fast all season long, and quite frankly, I'm very surprised that it took him this long to even get his first win of the season. Of course, that happened at Chicagoland just a couple of weeks ago, and then he won Daytona based off of some incidents that happened towards the end of the race to get his second win in a row. But this is a guy that has been quick every single week and has just had some things go against him, and now it seems like things are finally going his way, and this could spell trouble for the rest of the field. I still feel like Andrew Freenars is probably the guy to beat when it comes down to it, because he has been the most consistent and been the quickest overall, but I think Dylan Jones is a very strong second right now.
Very strong second position for sure. We'll see if anything else changes for that, but certainly you get to the middle portion of the season, you try to step up to the plate and make some noise, and Dylan Jones has certainly been doing that. He can toss his name into the hat there with the likes of course, Brandon Bowie, who's going to have another great run here tonight, and then you could argue if Andrew Freenars has stepped up big time and maybe knocked off, what you would have seen from the earlier races, Michael Guerrilla a tad bit, who again, hard to fault the guy for running P4, but certainly you do have Dylan Jones inserting himself into the picture. Bowie, DeMerchant, Guerrilla were the drivers who finished 1, 2, 3 in the opening segment on the year, and Segment 2 championship brings some different drivers into it. And it was funny because when we went into that Chicagoland race, Trevor, a couple of weeks ago, the big thing with the schedule this year has been there's been a lot more off weeks. Well, 4 weeks in a row, we were curious if with the, the stop and start, if it would be difficult for somebody to find a rhythm. Seems to be the opposite for Dylan Jones.
Yeah, and, it's just incredible to see how much he has, come to be such a great driver over these past couple of weeks with 2 and possibly 3 in a row if he can keep it together. Just got to think about all the momentum that he is going to be using to propel himself forward into this point standings and into the championship rounds.
We'll see if he can again. The opening round starts September is when the playoffs hit. After tonight, as noted though, New Hampshire, Pocono, Watkins Glen, Darlington, and Indianapolis to close out the second segment, which would also complete 20 races total in the completion of that entire regular season. But as we noted tonight, 15 down, 15 races still to go, and Dylan Jones again doing such a good job. But Freenars, Bowie, Guerrilla, even Comstock, I think any given week, even though it's been Jones for the last 2, Brian, maybe shortly the last 3, all of these races, a little bit of difference on a caution flag, one more here or there, and this really could have gone to a handful of drivers. So I think that you're seeing that core group so close week in, week out.
Absolutely, and to that point, you brought up David Comstock, our series champion, defending this season. He has not had the season that I think any of us expected him to have at all. Of course, by this point last year, he had 3 wins on the season, and he's still searching for his first win of the season this year, and just 5 top 5 finishes through 11 starts so far this season. Just not what I expected to see that 42 car have so far this year, and he's just not had the speed that maybe we all expected him to have, but just looking for that rhythm that you talked about to try to get going. We're getting close to that point of the season where you really got to start ramping up your finishes. You've got to be able to find a way to finish top 5 and battle for wins every single week if you want to have a chance in the playoffs, especially against a guy like Dylan Jones, who's getting hot and getting ready to go on a stretch of 3 wins in a row, or Andrew Freenars, who's been hot pretty much from the start of the season. You've got to be able to find that rhythm if you want to be able to challenge people like that.
It hasn't happened to me in quite some time, but we do have to be aware of the jinx, but also at the same time note now, with 10 laps to go in this race, and if we were to get a yellow, still a possibility that this race has a race start and goes back green, that point of no return. 4 laps to go or less is really the first thing that Dylan Jones is shooting for, and on a long green flag run like this, Trevor, when you've got so much separation, I don't think an incident would come from contact between cars. It would certainly have to be from a single car mistake. Not to suggest, but we've seen a couple of those tonight, so it is not out of the equation. You are talking about it's easy to forget when you're getting down to the end and you're ready to wrap this thing up, but besides the run up to the pit stops we just saw, this set run to the end of the race is going to be about the second longest run of the night we've seen, and only maybe a handful of laps shorter. So you are talking about cars right now on probably some of the worst tires they've been running on. So nothing guaranteed. Get to the end. You want to finish this one out without incident. I really don't think a yellow benefits many drivers, maybe besides 2 or 3 of them that have a shot at winning this, like a Guerrilla or a Comstock. Other than that, I think everybody else has had plenty of laps under green flag conditions to get to where their car is good enough to be. And I think that we've kind of figured most of that out.
And just as you say that, Lionel Kalisto is having a lot of troubles coming off the turn number 2. He had a good gap back to Gabe Wood, and then as soon as he hit that turn 2 exit and got a little bit loose, Gabe Wood was able to capitalize within the next couple laps and take that position away. And now the number 1 of Daniel Fockingham is attempting to catch back up to get that seventh place position for a great finish. He's closing quickly now with only a couple laps to go.
Close it into quickly. We'll see if maybe anything can come from that. The gap between those two cars just under a second as of the last time by. There are a couple of battles not for position, just lap down cars passing one another. Kalisto is being caught by Falkenham, as you mentioned there, as Kalisto tries to also catch up to Gabe Wood. So maybe the mistakes for the 97 are going to hurt him. Falkenham to the inside of the racetrack, nice and easy with a move down low. So there's the swap out position. 7th and 8th get swapped with 7 laps to go.
And that's a big move for Daniel Fockingham to get that position, and now he's got the opportunity to try to chase down that double zero of Gabe Wood, who's about a second ahead of these guys right now. And oh, as Gabe gets extremely sideways coming off turn 4, he's going to give up that position with ease, as here comes Fockingham to go around him on the outside. So Daniel Fockingham essentially is going to get 2 positions in 1 lap thanks to that slip up by the double zero, and that's going to move him on up to the 6th position. And now it's up to Gabe Wood to see if he can try to get back to him and try to get that position back away from him here in the closing laps.
Into the closing laps, we'll see if anything else changes, but Daniel Falkenham is making himself known late in this one as Lionel Kalisto at number 97 machine got up and into the outside wall. Dylan Jones really wants to come by this time and take 4 laps to go. It seems like that at the very end here, everybody getting a little bit antsy getting to the end.
Yeah, absolutely. And now, just as we say that, Michael Cozy Jr. is able to take advantage of Lionel Kalisto's downfall in the past couple laps and pass Lionel Kalisto for the 8th position that he is in, trying to run him down. Lionel Kalisto is not having a good rest of the run for here tonight at Kentucky Speedway.
Close it in on the end. The couple of battles on track looks like that they have pretty much sorted themselves out for the time being. And now it is just a matter of if you can get to the end for Dylan Jones. A little bit of traffic in front. Shane Ewing, P11, as the last car scored on the lead lap. I don't think Shane Ewing would really mind if he gets passed up by Dylan Jones. It would mean 1 less lap that he has to run to the end of this race, Brian. And if he does catch him, it would only leave us with 10 cars left on the lead lap. But if you're Dylan Jones, I don't think that you really have any reason to put yourself next to a car. Not that Shane Ewing's going to take you out or anything, but avoid it at all costs. I think he's got enough time that I don't see much incentive for him to really get up to him. He might just kind of tiptoe behind to the end here.
Yeah, at this point with 2 laps to go, you have a 3-second advantage over Andrew Freenarch. There's no reason to run down Shane Ewing and try to push that issue unless he has an issue that forces you to get that close to him. You're just going to hit your marks. You can give up some of that gap if you want to, but I'm like you. You don't want to get beside anybody. You don't expect that anybody's going to give you an issue or potentially take you out, but you do not want to put yourself in a position where that could happen. You just stay where you are. Stay safe. Give yourself that cushion. As we get ready to come to the white flag, you know you just have about 1.5 miles to get home.
Home stretch for Dylan Jones in the number 11 machine. This one didn't start off as convincing as maybe some of the other ones did. Started this race again in a position where he did not qualify with the time. Had to start at a provisional in 13th position. 2 restarts and a very fast race car later in Dylan Jones getting set to make history. He'll be the first driver this season to take home 3 straight wins. It started 2 weeks ago from Chicagoland, a week ago on the high banks of Daytona, and tonight from Kentucky. 3's a crowd for Dylan Jones, back to back to back in the Full Throttle RSR Racing Cup Series, winner in the Kentucky 125.
And just a great job done by Dylan Jones. Was pitted when he felt necessary and was able to battle back, passing Brandon Bowie, Andrew Freenars for that race lead, and was able just to set sail and is going to be able to properly burn it down as he has put on a clinic these past 3 weeks.
Continues to be impressive. The difference into this evening, as we noted, not going to make that much of a difference in the overall championship standings because you're talking about 30 points of position. He's safely right now in a playoff spot as he gets to celebrating, but he came in 2 points behind Brandon Bowie. He will finish 2 positions in front of Brandon Bowie, and it is unofficial, but I believe you're looking at your new Segment 2 championship leader, and that would move him into the $150 position halfway through the segment. Dylan Jones is on a groove right now, and he gets his third straight win this time tonight on the 1.5 mile. That is the Kentucky Speedway. He's got celebrating to do, and we've got a weekly rendezvous to get to. We'll meet up with him down in Victory Lane on the other side, and we'll take one more opportunity to step back, and when we return to the Kentucky Speedway, you'll catch all of the LSRTV post-race show action. Dylan Jones, your winner from Kentucky. We'll chat with him next. You're watching LSRTV on iRacing Live. This broadcast is the copyrighted work of LSRTV, and it may not be rebroadcast, retranslated, or used in any form without the express written consent of Live Sim Racing L.L.C. and iRacing.com Motorsport Simulations. LSRTV would like to thank you for your support, and we hope you enjoyed tonight's broadcast. And welcome back live to LSRTV's coverage of the 2018 Full Throttle Real Sim Racing Cup Series powered by English Auto LLC. Post-race show action for you on your home for sim racing at iRacing Live. Happy that you're sticking with us through now 15 races on this 2018 campaign. The Kentucky 125 falls into our rearview mirror. We'll head trackside and talk with your top finishers in a moment, as well get you set for next week's race out in the Granite State for the New Hampshire Motor Speedway. That one coming up on July the 23rd, right here at LSRTV and iRacing Live. We'll get to that in just a moment, though. First, let's take a look top to bottom at your LSRTV full race results. In this one, Dylan Jones may be vibing with some of the energies of last week's Friday the 13th. He goes 13th to first for his third straight win of the year here tonight. Andrew Faridar's third comes home second, and Brandon Bowie picks up a spot to end up in third. We'll talk with all of those drivers post-race momentarily. Michael Gorelli, David Comstock, again, these drivers right in that championship mix as well. Coming home 4-5 tonight, Daniel Falkenham with a P6, Gabe Wood 7th, Michael Cozy Jr. 8th, Brian Chambliss 9th, and Shane Ewing didn't get past late, but another car had to come down to the pit lane, so he will end as the last car on the lead lap exactly where he started in P10.
And that driver that had to come to pit road right towards the end was Scott McClendon. He comes home 11th, one lap down, followed by Andrew T. Jones running in 12th. Lionel Callisto also had some issues. He's going to end up finishing 13th, one lap down. Tom Morano will finish 14th, a couple of laps down. The rest of these drivers were multiple laps down. Dwayne Vincent was the last car still running on the racetrack at 12 laps down. He'll come home in the 15th position, and then the rest of these drivers unfortunately had their nights end just a little early. Daniel Eberhardt finishes 16th, Spencer Pree comes home 17th, Colson Bermudez will finish 18th, and Troy Haight rounds out your 19-car field here tonight at the Kentucky Speedway. And after a very wild night, for the third week in a row, Mr. Evan Pasoko, you get to speak to the same guy down in Victory Lane, Mr. Dylan Jones.
And it has been quite the stretch for Dylan Jones, all of a sudden right in the thick of things in the championship picture, and I believe your new segment 2 championship points leader, Dylan Jones, your race winner tonight for the Kentucky Speedway. Dylan, congratulations. Congratulations, congratulations. 3 of a kind for you. 3 races in a row. Tonight a little bit different. You had to come through the pack, work those 97 laps of green flag action to the end, but you come out on top once again. How you feeling?
Oh, it feels pretty good here to finally get back into the swing of things and get back in a little bit of a groove here, get on the winning side of things. But yeah, the race, it wasn't easy. It was a challenge. We had to work for it today.
I thought for a moment you were going to say it's finally fun to get back into victory lane. You have had to wait an entire 6 days since we were in Daytona Beach last week out. Chicago, Daytona, Kentucky. Yes, 2 of those are some intermediate racetracks, but this place kind of rocks you around a lot more than that smooth Chicago does with that curved bank and the flow that racetrack has all the way around. What was it tonight that made the difference for you? You didn't take that time to queue, so you had to start to the back. Only 2 caution flags early. Did those kind of help you make up some spots and get closer to the front for the big run to the end?
Oh yeah, that definitely falls into what I feel like I'm pretty good at, is the long run, and that's definitely what I needed here. I think I said last week that this track's kind of neutral for me. I'm not great, but if I can get a hang of it, we can contend, and that's what happened tonight. We got those nice long runs, took it real easy, especially on entry. A lot of guys were overdriving entry, and just to save some tires and didn't screw up on pit road and put it all together to get the W.
It's always nice when things can come together like that. You look at some of the other guys that you've been racing around really all season, but of course tonight, you know, Andrew Farinars is up there in the segment championship that you're racing against. Brandon Bowie, somebody who you started off behind after we got the win to open up the segment, and you know, so you guys come home 1-2-3. You're 1-2-3 in the championship standings. I know that these aren't strangers to you. You've been racing with these guys for quite some time, but maybe getting our own little bit of a version of the big 3 here. What do you learn in racing in such tight quarters with those guys, seemingly week by week? Doesn't matter what racetrack you guys are at. It seems to always be you guys in a mix.
Just got to keep yourself out of trouble and stay consistent and smooth in these races. Those guys don't make a lot of mistakes, so if any one of us make a mistake in the race, you're not really going to have a chance to recover against the rest of them, so you just got to keep consistent and keep your mistakes to a minimum.
So I've asked you this question the next 2 weeks, or the last 2 weeks, I should say, but we look forward to next week. New Hampshire Motor Speedway. Very different than the racetracks we've been to so far. We were kind of talking about Kentucky's different from some of the other intermediate tracks because of how little banking there is compared to a place like a Charlotte, obviously. But, I mean, you talk about New Hampshire, that's a racetrack with virtually no banking and very little lateral grip. Going to be tiptoeing around in the Granite State next Monday night. Can you go for the 4 in a row? What's the outlook going into that one?
Yeah, New Hampshire's a pretty good track for me. It's a real challenge, you know, obviously with being flat, passing is going to be real difficult, but I always feel like the racing's actually decent there. I know a lot of guys don't like it there, but we're going to go for another one, 4 in a row.
We'll wish you the best of luck for that one, and maybe if you guys can get that qualifying effort in, make it a little bit easier to get around some of those guys. But we appreciate your time, Dylan. I know we've been borrowing a lot of it recently, and I guess that's a good problem to have, but we'll let you take off. As always, though, the sponsors and the shout-outs, it makes that 11 Ford go so fast.
Thanks to all the guys at Aegis, Serve Pro, everyone who makes this happen at LSRTV. It's great fun.
Race winner tonight, Dylan Jones. Dylan, always a pleasure chatting with you. Again, congratulations, congratulations, congratulations. That's 3 in a row for you. Unofficially, I think you leap to the lead in the Segment 2 Championship. You're still sitting pretty good for the playoffs. All is well halfway through the season. Best of luck next week. Maybe we'll talk again.
Thanks, guys.
Race winner tonight from Kentucky, Dylan Jones. Andrew Farinars in a seemingly familiar place, Brian Macklin. Again, a second-place finish. And again, it is behind the number 11 Dylan Jones. It's a P2 for the 88. You're trackside with him.
Yeah, and for what seems like the 10th week in a row, I'm down here on pit road getting ready to talk to Andrew Farinars. Andrew, another week, here we are, second place once again. A very solid night for you guys, but obviously not what you're looking for as you finish second once again.
Yeah, man. I guess I'll get used to it. You know, it's just nice to finish in the top 3. I'm happy with this second, especially tonight. I don't know what it was about this week. If it was a track, it was a setup. you get a feel when you're fast at a track, and I just never got it. I felt like I was gonna spin out every lap. The car just felt on edge. I couldn't hit the same line. I don't know what it was about this week. I haven't had this feeling in a long time at a track. But come home second was better than I thought I'd do today. And truthfully, it feels like a win because I thought we were gonna be mired back in fifth to 10th kind of range.
And we had a pair of cautions to start this thing off with, and then we went 97 laps going to the finish without a caution. How hard is that from a driver's standpoint to run almost 100 laps, especially on a track like this, as bumpy and as grueling as this place can be, to go that long without that opportunity just to kind of slow down and get your head back into it? How do you go through that without making any major mistakes? Dylan was talking about how guys like you and Brandon Bowie, Michael Guerrilla, there's not a lot of mistakes being made by those drivers, so you can't afford to make them. When you have a run that long, how hard is it to not make any mistakes like that?
Yeah, it's very, very hard, and it all wraps around the practice. I try to run as much as I can and practice those runs. I think it showed I was kind of able to hit the same line, and it physically it gets fatiguing depending on what you got your wheels set out or whatever. But you get sweaty and hot, and towards lap 70, 80, you just want the race to be over at that point because it gets grueling, and especially on this track. I was not a big fan of this track tonight. It was not very fun to drive late in the run. So on top of your sweating, you're fatigued, and you just don't want to be out there. It gets hard.
Absolutely, and I got a number you may not want to hear. I looked back to your stats from New Hampshire last year, and for both those races, you had a very consistent finish. You finished 7th in both of those races. What do you have to do different next week when we head to New Hampshire in order to improve that finish and maybe get up here and possibly be talking to me here on pit road once again?
Truly, I'm going to call Dave Washington because he's the king at New Hampshire there. There's a track I really struggled at last year. I tried it out a few weeks ago, and I felt like I had a lot more speed. This year, I don't know what it is, if it's just more time in the sim or what, but we've been quicker everywhere. Even places I've struggled at, we've been quicker. Charlotte was an example. We were terrible there last year, and we actually came out and won there. So I have high hopes. New Hampshire's actually one of 3 tracks I can consider a home track, so I like going there in real life. I'm hoping to like going there in the sim. But yeah, I have hopes, and I'm only going to lean on Dave and Dylan to help me out this week.
All right, Andrew, before we let you go, just want to give you that opportunity once again, sponsor shout out. Who makes it happen for you on the 88 machine?
Big thanks to my brother for building the 2 computers now. Got to thank everybody in Aegis. Dave Washington was actually on top of the box tonight for me and Dylan. He was reading lap times. Kind of funny, me and Dylan were matching lap times those last 20 laps back and forth. Big thanks to Daniel, Steve spotting for me, Kyle Kammer, Eric Stanford, just everybody on the Aegis team, and you guys for broadcasting, all the fans. Hope we put on a good show. We had a battle there for the lead. I thought that was pretty entertaining. Truthfully, I should have let Dylan go. He was a lot quicker, but you got to put something on for all these guys who watch every week.
Absolutely, and what a great show it was. And Andrew, before I let you go, I just want to say, go out there and win next week so you can talk to Evan Pasoko. I know nobody wants to talk to him, but he's probably tired of hearing from the same people every week, too.
Yeah, I like talking to you, Brian. I don't kind of tradition now, but yeah, I'll give it my best, I promise.
There we go. Andrew Freenarch, you finished the 2nd here tonight at Kentucky, and for what seems like the 10th week in a row, I get to talk to him down here on pit road. Next week is going to be different, though. Congratulations here tonight, and we'll see you next week.
Yep, see you next week.
All right, that's our 2nd place finisher. Now, Trevin Valderrama, I believe you have caught up with our 3rd place finisher, Mr. Brandon Bowie, who had a very unique strategy compared to everybody else, and it still paid off pretty well with that 3rd place finish.
Yeah, absolutely. Down here on pit lane with our 4th place starter, 3rd place finisher, number 43 of Brandon Bowie. Brandon, the big thing about tonight, you had an interesting strategy going on. What was going through your head, and what was the car like on the track after that pit stop?
Well, the strategy was, basically to do what I didn't do at Chicago, which is pit early enough to take the lead and try to see if I can hold off some of the fast guys. But ultimately, the goal was just to pit early, or pit when I can make it, stay out front, and try to keep it clean. I knew I didn't have anything for Dylan or Andrew. The main goal was to finish top 3. I knew that Michael had pitted after me and have fresher tires. So, I mean, the ultimate goal was just to finish top 3 and go to the next track. Unfortunately, this is one of my worst tracks, so I just had to move on from it.
And you already have 2 wins on the season. I don't believe you'll be leading the Segment 2 championship after this, but you still have the overall championship standings, if my math is correct. So, what are you just going to keep on continuing to do to make sure that you're up in that spot and you can retake that Segment 2 championship first place away from Dylan Jones?
Well, it's not going to be easy. Dylan is on a roll right now. I believe that is his 3rd consecutive win. Or I could be wrong, but I believe it is. But, it's going to be hard. Dylan and Andrew and Eberhard, they're all fast. So they're pretty much the fast, I guess you said the best 3 right now, just like real life. So, it's going to be a little difficult. So it might take a little bit of strategy. Maybe some cautions to kind of fall my way, but if none of those things happen, then we're just gonna try to get the best finish I can out of it. Like you said, I'm still leading the main points, which is great as well. So if I can just get it, maybe just a little bit of luck fall my way, maybe pull off another win. You never know, so we'll just have to wait and see.
Yes, racing is a thing that can change in the matter of weeks or even seconds. So, before we let you go, do you have any sponsor shout-outs? Who gets the 43 machine done?
Yeah, I got to definitely thank Commodore's Garage and RacingBits.com. Check them out if you want to sell or buy some memorabilia, any type of NASCAR, auto racing, anything like that. Got to thank my family. Got to thank you guys for broadcasting the race. Got to thank my boys, the LCL guys, for helping me out. I was definitely struggling. A couple ideas was given to me, and it kind of definitely helped me finish 3rd tonight. And gotta thank the man above.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for stopping on by, and good luck next week and the rest of the season.
Thank you.
And now back to Evan Pasoko.
Let's top 3 finishers tonight. Familiar order: Dylan Jones 1, Andrew Ferdinand 2, and it is Brandon DeBowie slicing in 3rd. Big thanks, as always, to them for joining us. And I don't think Brandon DeBowie could really sell himself as short as maybe that, because, again, he's somebody who leads the overall championship up until tonight, leading the Segment 2 championship. Very much in the picture as well, with the likes of Jones and Farinars, maybe a big 4 per se, if we will. And, a relatively quiet evening for him, aside from making that strategy call, Trevor. But again, you compare the first 50 laps of this race, not even that, maybe first 35 or so, until that 97-lap run to the end of this race, 2 very different races. And it's just tough to come up with different ways to describe what Dylan Jones has been doing oh so good. And again, we talk about the fact that you're looking at 20 car fields instead of 30 or whatever, but I think that the talent level at the very top is so concentrated that you're seeing those 4 or 5 guys, and it's 3 weeks in a row that he comes out on top. I am not going to doubt him going into next week that he can do it again.
Yeah, and it's, as you said, 20 cars, but still, the strength of the field is so high that, it's just basically running against 30 cars. So it's just really exciting to see all these guys pull out all their stops and everything. But, I'm sure all these guys, or the majority of these guys, had Kentucky on their calendar and saw it and were just dreading it. But they handled it for the most part in a good way. As you said, 30 laps in the beginning weren't too good. But once they started feeling out the track and knowing how it felt, they did just fine. They did a 97-lap run to the end, and it was a spectacular sight. We had some great battles for the lead and mid-pack, so there's really nothing bad that you can say about this race.
So we look forward now to New Hampshire, Brian, as well as closing the book on Kentucky. We go into those specialty tracks. New Hampshire is a racetrack. Listen, I'm not good at tracks in general. I hate New Hampshire. It is a tough place to drive. Dylan Jones admitting that it is a tough place to get around. These guys will certainly show us how it's done. I mean, you look back on Andrew Freenars being disappointed with a couple of 7th place finishes, saying he had a rough year there. 7th place finish, still a great result, I'm sure, for most folks that would like to hop into a series like this and walk away with that. So the bar is up there. Obviously, everybody's going to be shooting for Dylan Jones. I don't think you're going to see many people cutting him any breaks.
Well, when you're as competitive as guys like Andrew Freenars is, and Dylan Jones, Brandon Bowie, David Comstock, all of these guys that are used to being up front, leading laps, winning races, a 7th place finish essentially is a bad finish to them because they're used to being up front, leading laps, and contending for race victories. So for Andrew Freenars, it may sound kind of condescending, but he really does imagine that a 7th place finish is just not good enough at this stage of the game, and it's really not when you look at the competition that you're around with Dylan Jones knocking out 3 wins in a row and Brandon Bowie being so consistent week in and week out. You really can't afford to have that type of a run. And I'm with you. You said that Brandon Bowie really sold himself short. I believe he is a part of that Big 3 picture. I really think right now you look at the Big 3, you got to talk about Brandon Bowie, who won the Segment 1 championship, leads the overall standings right now. He's got a pair of wins. He has the most top 10 finishes out of anybody in the series this season. He's definitely in that talk. And then you got Dylan Jones, who just knocked out 3 wins in a row. You definitely have to think about him. And then Mr. Consistency this season so far, Andrew Freenars, who just seems to be up front every single week and just continues to knock them out. I believe those 3 drivers are the ones that everybody has to be trying to outrun. And then you got a handful of other guys that have an opportunity to go after him. David Comstock, Daniel Eberhardt, a couple of these drivers that have the speed but just haven't quite had the success so far this year.
And of course, we'll see how the rest of that plays out, but we are going to have to wait and let it simmer for a week because that does it for us here tonight for round number 15. We're halfway home this season in the Full Throttle Real Sim Racing Cup Series, and we will return next Monday. Before we do so, though, we have plenty of sim racing action coming up for you, and a special event this Wednesday featuring the Cars Esport Tour with the American Pool Supply $110 in purse up for grabs, and a 125-lap late model stock main event. All of that live, as always, on LSRTV and the iRacing Esports Network. That is this Wednesday, starting at 9 o'clock p.m. Eastern Time. You are not going to want to miss that one. And then, of course, if you want a look at our full upcoming broadcast schedule, you can take a peek over at livesimracing.com. Best way to stay up to date with us, to follow us on social media. That's a like on Facebook at facebook.com/LSRTV official. And you can also follow us on Twitter at LSRTV. I think 40 more followers, and we'll be at 1,000. And we've got some NASCAR Peak Antifreeze Series swag to give out when we do get to that point. However, until we get there, and until next time, on behalf of our entire team at Live Racing L.L.C., for myself, Evan Pasoko, for Brian Backlund, Trevor Valderrama, and our producer, Cisco Scarabuzzo, we want to thank first you for tuning in, and of course, for Dylan Jones and everybody else for being here. A tip of the hat to the driver of the number 11 machine. That is 3 wins in a row for Dylan Jones at Chicago, Daytona, and now Kentucky. Will it also be New Hampshire? We will be back for that race Monday, July the 23rd. That race and every race of the Full Throttle Real Sim Racing Cup Series, powered by English Auto LLC, going to be found right here on LSR TV, your home for sim racing. Until next time, good night from Kentucky.